presentation is in Dutch, right?
It's in Dutch.
Yeah, so... yeah, no. It's probably on the slide, but our next speaker is Mr. Kevin Wheeler.
Okay, thank you very much. It's nice to be here this afternoon. And it's really always great to come to the Netherlands because you can speak English. Great. As you can see up there, I do a number of different things, but one of the things that I do is run a small research group called the Future of Talent Institute. And what we try to do is look at big trends, the big macro things that are going to have an impact on talent, work, recruitment, HR, and all those related areas. So we look at and we say, what will you all be doing in 5 years? What are some of the trends that are changing the profession of HR and recruitment? And what is likely to be happening based on demographics, based on economics, based on the social changes that are going on? What's going to be happening in the world in a few years? So I'm just going to take you through the big picture of what I think we'll begin to see and already are seeing in some cases. So I call it trends in recruitment. When I start out, they'll be bigger than recruitment, but I'll end up with trends that directly are focused on the recruiting industry. So let's start out just looking at some of these things. The fundamental thing that all of us have to understand is that the way we do business, the way we think about business, has changed completely in the last 10 years. And I think most people kind of know that. Maybe you feel it, but it's really hard to talk about it because we don't have the language yet to talk about a lot of the things that are going on. If you're 20 years old, I think you know this very well. If you're my age, we see it, but we don't like it. And so let me talk about what I think is going on. We're moving from a focus on money as the primary way to motivate people and the primary way to reward people to what I'm calling meaning. If you ask a young person today, and we do lots and lots of surveys of college-age students and those who have just graduated from college, and we ask them, what are you looking for in your first job? What do you really want to do? And almost always they say, we want to do something that makes a difference. I want to work somewhere that I do something that's good. And of course they all define that differently. But fundamentally they don't want to work for a company that just is focused on making money or doesn't care what they do about the environment or about society. And if they are destroying the environment or doing something bad, they don't want to work for that company. Right? So it's a very different focus. And no matter how much money you offer them, they're probably not going to go work at that company. And that's very different than when I was in school, because when I graduated, I didn't really care what the company did. I just wanted to make as much money as I could. And that's pretty much the way it's been for most of us. I didn't even know what the company did sometimes. And it didn't even matter, because the focus was, I got a job, great, and I'm earning a lot of money. Those are the main things. Right? Very different. It's also a big change, especially if you're at my age. It's from doing things the way somebody tells you, doing things in some A to B to C order, to grabbing an opportunity and going for it. So if you're in a company and you see an opportunity to go try something or go do something, you go do it. And this company that's sponsoring this today is a great example of an opportunity. All right? Guido and his staff, they saw an opportunity to do something, and they went and they did it. Now, maybe many of us my age would like to have done that, but we couldn't for many, many reasons. Social reasons, money reasons. We didn't have resources. The cost to do that would have been way too big for any person our age to do. And so you couldn't do those things. But today you can. And so we've gone from this sort of methodical, process-oriented world into a world where we just want to go take an opportunity. It's Nike's slogan. Just do it. Nike's motto is really the motto of the 21st century. They're not very much focused on having a long-term career. And if you go and you try to recruit a young person, particularly, by telling them they will have a very stable, safe, secure job for 20 years, first of all, they won't believe you. And secondly, they don't want it. They maybe want to work for a couple of years for one company, 3 years for another company. They may want to work for a little while in the U.S., a little while in Holland. Maybe they want to go live in Asia. It's having opportunity and having a different experience. It's not about having a career. And I don't think there's any young person, hardly, that really desires to work for one company for 20 or 25 years. Just not in their genetic makeup anymore. It's not about having goals. They don't have 5-year goals, or my goal is to own a house, or my goal is to do these sort of things that many of us set in our lives. To own a car, or to do something was a goal that you had. Okay? They are really more about dreams. I'm sure when you look at all the startup companies that are out there, these are companies that many of us at my age may look at and say, I'm not sure this is really a very solid foundation. I'm not sure this is really going to survive long term. It's a nice idea, but I don't know that you really can make an IBM out of it. But they don't care. They're living their dream. And so when you try to recruit, and I look at recruiters over and over and over again in our branding, our messaging, a lot of the things we do appeal to me, and they may appeal to people in their 40s, but they're not appealing to younger people at all. Most of these messages completely miss the market for them entirely. And the big one, the one that I could spend the whole afternoon talking about, is this movement from a society and a world where everything was controlled to a society and a world where you have thousands of choices. And the problem today for almost everybody, you and me, is which choice do I make? Do I do this or this or this? I have so many choices. And I don't mean just about work. I mean about the newspaper. What do you read? You take your iPad, you can download maybe 1,000 different news sources. Video, newspaper, magazine. You can download them in many languages. And you sit there, what do I read? And not only what do I read, which do I believe? Because I'm getting a different perspective from everybody. So the challenge of our generation, of the future, is really going to be how do we deal with lots of choice? I don't have to live in the Netherlands all my life. I can travel. I can go live somewhere else. I don't have to live with one person my whole life. And we're seeing marriage rates dropping to very low levels in the Netherlands and all over the world because people say, why do I get married? It's like a career. I don't want to be with you for 35 years. If I do, okay, we'll hang together for 35 years. But why do we have to sign a document for it? We'll just live together. And then maybe I'll have a different opportunity or a different experience. And if you're my age, you said, this is horrible. This is democracy immoral. But there's nothing wrong with it. It's fine. And so it's a shift. And all of this is a shift in thinking. And virtually everybody in HR lives on this side. And we've got to get over on this side if we're going to be successful in the future. And the last one is this concept of permanent versus project. And I just sort of picked those words out because they're words that we use a lot. But permanent employment is actually frightening. The last thing I want is permanently to be employed by you. I want, again, to have opportunity. I want to work on projects. I want to do things that I know when they're going to start. I know when they're going to stop. And I can plan my life around that particular opportunity or that particular project. So think about this as a framework for everything I'm going to talk about as I move on into the big trend number one. Now, all of these trends are made up of little trends. And there's a lot of little trends that are going on. First, we look at work. Just look at work itself. We're automating and putting robots in many hundreds of things. If you go to Philips or Asmel or any of the companies here in the Netherlands, I guarantee you, they have a whole group of people looking at automation and robotics. And they're probably putting those things in right now in every one of those factories. And that means that there will not be jobs for whoever's doing those things today. And is that bad? I don't think it's bad. I don't think anything in the employment world is good or bad. It's just, it is. It's a fact. And when you have facts, you have to deal with them. And it's a reality. And the reality is many, many jobs are going to go away. They already have. We don't have people, grinding corn in a windmill anymore. Right? We don't have people fixing horses anymore. All those jobs are gone, and the jobs we have today are going to be gone as well. Now, we don't yet know what the new jobs will be. If we had more time, I could talk about some of them, but they're really way out there and crazy. We would think they are, but these are probably the jobs of the future. And so we really have to understand that work is going to change. And whatever you're doing, whoever you're hiring today, probably won't even be a job in a year or two or three. Young people, again, and more people even my age are saying, life is short. I want to do something amazing. I want to do something great. This is why Google and Facebook have no trouble hiring people. Because they let you live your dream. They give you an opportunity. They let you have different experiences. And whether you believe it or not, they tell you, and most of the young people do believe it, that working here is awesome. It's fun. It's great. And you're going to have a really good experience. Nobody's going to be walking around checking up on what you're doing every minute. There's not going to be a million managers and rules and HR people running around. You're going to have a lot of freedom to do things that are meaningful, all right? Which is the whole reason I come to work here. All right? We've got firms are getting small, and they're going to remain small. Every company in the world is shrinking, and you're going to see them shrinking in different ways. And I don't have time to get into all the structural things that are going on in corporations, but you're not going to see another Philips or IBM again, I don't believe. Companies are going to stay very small. They're going to be networked. They're going to make partnerships. They're going to work with other people, which means you have to learn to collaborate and communicate extremely well. So this is going to be a skill. I mentioned this earlier, but people aren't getting married. They're not having kids. They're living with a partner. They're not buying a house. They're not buying cars. These are just facts. General Motors just had a whole projection, 10 years of sales they're projecting out, and they're very worried. They're predicting a significant decline in sales because right now, 45% of all their cars are sold to people over 50. This is pretty interesting, isn't it? And young people are tending to buy either smaller, more economical cars, they're buying used cars, or they're not buying a car at all because they're living in Amsterdam or Paris or New York and they're taking the public transit or they're riding a bicycle. And they're doing that because of the environment and for their health and because why do I want to waste money on a car? Because I want to have freedom to go and do other stuff. And a car is a burden that pulls me back. A house is a burden that holds me back. And I don't need a house. I can live in a flat. I can live with my friends. I don't have to have a house. And so that's changing. It's a different set of values. The values of these young people are about sustainability. It's about just enough. It's about, I don't need all this material stuff that your generation, meaning me, wanted. I want simpler life. I want a healthier life. I want a different life. And so when you add all this stuff up, and you say, so what do all these trends mean? And I think the answer is very simple. It means that everybody is an entrepreneur. And I look at every young person fundamentally, even if you work for another company, the way you think is the way of an entrepreneur. Freedom, opportunity, choice, keep it simple, keep it lean, and make it able that I can go and do anything I want to do. Okay? You all believe me?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Does the economic crisis, and if it would continue and get worse, would that affect this trend? Because I think this might be a trend when everything is going well. We all want to have an awesome job and opportunities, but maybe when it goes a little bad, all we want is money.
You know, there's an old saying. The Chinese have the same character in Chinese is for danger and trouble and opportunity. Same character in Chinese. This crisis is the greatest motivator for entrepreneurism there has ever been. I can't get a job. I graduated from university and I can't find work. Look at Spain. Look at Egypt. Look at Italy. Look at every country. They can't find jobs. So if you can't find a job, what do you tend to do? Start your own business. Try something out. Become an entrepreneur. And the creativity that these people have is incredible. And they're creating whole new professions. So, I mean, we're really living in our minds, I think most of us, are in this old, skewed yesterday world. And we really have to start thinking about what could it be like tomorrow. I know you can't see it yet. It's not right here in front of us. But it's happening. I just looked at a report from Mercer on the Netherlands. And this is free. You can download it from Mercer, which is an HR consulting firm. It's in English and Dutch, and they have a whole thing here. And they're talking about engagement, retirement, my career, my company, based on a survey. Every figure for the Netherlands is getting worse, significantly worse. Less engagement, less retention, everything. They're not happy. People aren't happy. Young people aren't happy. And therefore, when you try to recruit these people, I think it's like climbing up Mount Everest. It's harder and harder every day to recruit them, and it's even harder once you recruit them to keep them.
Yeah, but I have a question.
Yeah.
We recognize the strategy because I think we have heard it before.
Yeah.
That when we looked at the starters, like students, we were expecting people to think more about meaning and, and highlighting, let's say, the green image that we're trying to call the pillars and sustainability. Then we actually found out they're just interested in money and career and development, and that whole added value and environment wasn't as strong as we had expected. Or maybe the trend is later in Holland than in the US. Could there be differences?
I think there's 3 or 4 factors. One is what I'm talking about is really going to be easy to see in 4 or 5 years. All right, that's number one. We're talking about future trends that are starting and beginning to be seen. That's number one. Number two, I think you're right. It is already much more obvious in America. It's even more obvious in China. And it's even more obvious in other parts of the world. India is a great example, where the whole report just came out on entrepreneurism in India. I mean, literally every young college-educated person in India is trying to start their own business. Right? So it's a huge thing that's going on all around the world, partly driven by the recession. It will be accelerated by the recession. Plus, all of this is a curve. Not every young person is going to be like this. There's going to be some that are sort of like that, some that are extremely like that, and some that are pretty much like us, the older generation. Okay? And the ones who are at the extreme end of that, you've never seen them. They have no interest in Phillips or anybody else here. They're out doing their own thing. It's like Guido over there or whoever. I don't think he ever applied for a job there. Okay? And you never saw him. He's not in the job market. And so the ones we see are the more traditional ones who, for one reason or another, haven't taken these jobs. So you just have to put all this into perspective. But it's always like, I read a great article, just as a little sidelight, because I think it's very humorous, in a magazine that's very well respected in America called Scientific American. And this was a 1920-something, early 1920s edition of the magazine. And it had an article about the automobile. And it was saying the automobile has made great traction. It's getting tremendous market share. More and more people are owning cars. But never in our predictions will the horse disappear as a means of transportation. Okay? You cannot imagine the future. That's the problem. We cannot imagine it until we get there. So you have to take some of this stuff almost on faith that it's going to come. And it won't look exactly like I'm talking about. I'm just putting together trends and projecting possibilities. I'm not saying, I wouldn't even give this a 50%, 60% possibility. Okay? It's likely to be like this. I'm sure parts of this will be absolutely correct. But I think you just have to keep, what I'm trying to do with all this research that I do, is just open up minds to thinking. And to say, is this what I'm seeing? Can I connect to this? Does this make sense to me? And how do we begin to adapt our strategies and our recruitment and our HR policies to start to be accommodating to these changes? Okay? And I don't expect it will be a revolution. It's going to be a process that takes time. But awareness is the first step, I think, in the road.
Well, Mr. Wheeler, if you bring out the message as an organization that you can be an entrepreneur within an organization, maybe the objectiveness will rise.
Absolutely, and that's a really great point. If you have an organization that's future focused enough to allow people to have freedom within that organization, so they in effect are their own entrepreneurs, you can keep people, and that is fundamentally, that is Google's strategy. Google has everyone works in a project, and it's multidisciplinary, and there's almost no structure within that project. It's self-structured. So the people in the project decide who's going to do what. Some manager doesn't come in and say, you do this and you do this. So it's a form of entrepreneurship within the company. I think the motto that we're seeing more and more for all of us is that we realize job security will not come from the corporation or the company or from the government. Job security is our job. And if you have skills, if you have abilities and capabilities, and if you have some sort of ambition and creativity, you will always have a job. You will always be able to earn money. And I think that's the big aha for me. You can go work for a company if you want to, that's fine. But you're never saying, now I don't have to worry anymore. Because you're always saying, what's going to be my next thing? What am I going to do next? Am I continuing to learn? Am I continuing to get new skills so that I can move forward at whatever happens? Because who knows what's going to happen? I think this is just some verification of what I'm saying. Because if you just start picking up newspapers and magazines and reading, you're just going to see all these things coming more and more. There's tons of research now and statistics underlying some of the stuff that I'm talking about. And many of you are probably seeing this flexibility piece about young people coming and saying, I don't want to work 9 to 5 or 8 to 5. I want to work 2 days a week, half a day, or whatever it is. And, again, HR has a very difficult time allowing that to happen. We don't have the systems. We don't have, our computer won't allow that. I'm sorry. We let our systems get in the way of what is really going to be an effective way to have people. We may need 3 people to do the job, not 1, but they all work just a less amount of time. But this is just something that's we don't like that. We don't feel comfortable with that. And therefore we resist it and push back. Big trend number 2. Collaboration for crowdsourcing is clearly the way we're going to do work in the future, and the way we're doing it now, actually. Right? Are you familiar with crowdsourcing as a term? It's fundamentally just asking a lot of people about a problem or an issue. And this has been going on for millions of years. It's nothing new. But what's new about it is the focus of using social media and harnessing it to corporate problems. And if you think back, I think back in my career, if we had a problem that we wanted to solve in the company, we would put together a team of employees and say, go and solve this problem. And it was a very internally focused thing, and if you did anything outside, it was sort of secretive, and you didn't tell them why you wanted this information outside, and you certainly didn't go to a competitor and ask for their opinion about this. And yet what's going on right now today is the exact opposite. Now it's we've got a problem, we don't know how to solve it, can you help? And the best example that I can think of that's extremely real from a very well-known company is Eli Lilly, a company that makes pharmaceuticals. about 10 years ago, quite a long time ago now, had a series of problems that they had not been able to solve around chemical and weird scientific stuff, I don't understand, problems that they couldn't solve. So they created a website called Innocentive, which still, you can go out and use it right now. And they put out these problems to the world. And they said, we cannot solve this particular problem. Anybody that can solve it, or any group of people, will get $1 million for solving this problem. They solved most of their problems in the first year. And most of the problems were solved by people that knew nothing at all about pharmaceuticals or chemistry. Right? It was a fascinating experiment. So the site still exists. And you go on the site and you'll see some very weird projects. Like the last one I saw was a glue that you can put something on the wall and it will hold 25 kilos, but you can remove it and it will not damage the wall. Okay? So that's a project they have out there right now. Okay? And I think that one is worth $50,000. Each one has a price. Now, they don't all come from Eli Lilly now. Now they come from everywhere. Okay? But this is crowdsourcing your business solutions. And yet, this has been going on for almost a decade, and many, many different organizations are using it. I've not seen that in HR yet. We're starting to see it in recruiting, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But it's we're way behind a lot of these trends and what we're doing with these trends. So we're starting to see this now. In fact, I was just working with a small startup in Palo Alto, California. Their business model is to crowdsource candidates. They don't use no Boolean search. They use no job boards. They only search by asking other people for people. That's it. Online. So basically, they put out, just like Innocentive, they put out jobs that they have, and they ask people in the world, you and me and everybody else, to source candidates for them. And people, no, they don't pay you for that. No. They don't pay anybody for that. And yet they're still getting great results. Now they charge the client that takes the candidate for the candidate, but they don't pay anybody for the sourcing. We'll see how good it is. It's an early attempt, but I think it's a very clever attempt at getting all of us to find candidates for them without having to do a whole lot of search and all kinds of other stuff. So they list jobs and say, if you want to work for, they don't even tell you the name of the company, but they give you a description of what the company is like and what it's like to work there and the kind of work you'll do. And they've got a lot of people that have applied, have been recommended for these jobs. So just interesting model. I don't know if it'll work or not. Lots of companies are using crowdsourcing internally with certain kinds of referral programs and asking other people in their network to send candidates to them or recommend people to work for them. We've got a crowdsourced assessment coming with companies like Checkster, which is a company in the U.S. that actually you send out, they send out a survey to people that you tell them to send it to. Candidates give you some email addresses. They mail a very short survey to whoever is on that email list, and they get back anonymous feedback on the candidate from that. I mean, nothing that earth-shaking, not that big a deal, but it's a way to crowdsource assessment. And it's different than referral. It's different than phoning someone and talking to them. But this is you can actually create a structured survey that has some statistical validity, and you can compare different answers from different people across it. And you can ask the people that you send it to send it to other people who know that person.
That way it's crowdsourced.
Yeah. That's the way it's crowdsourced.
So that's illegal,
No.
It's asking referral or
Not in the U.S. It may be illegal in the EU.
Yeah.
But it's not illegal in the U.S. And that's another whole topic that we can go on that we won't get into. Okay. So there's lots of things in the legal world that need to be changed pretty significantly. Okay? This is a company called Recruitment. This is an Australian startup, which is actually crowdsourcing recruiters, basically. Basically, if you're a small company, you have one or two jobs that you need to have filled. You just put the job, you post the job here, and anybody who's a recruiter, freelance, entrepreneurial recruiter, can bid and say, I'll fill this job for you in 4 days for $100. I'll fill it for you in 6 days for $1,000 or whatever it is, okay? And you, as the purchaser, you evaluate the recruiters and decide which one you want to go with. But it's a great way to not have a recruiting department, to not have to worry about that, and to get positions filled, especially for very low volume and small companies. Okay? Well, lots of interesting things going on. Okay? So let's look at this one. This is about health and happiness. I don't know if there's a lot of talk in the Netherlands about health and happiness, but this has become a global trend. There's at least 6 books out on happiness right now. There's books that assess entire countries on their happiness score. And what the research on happiness has been finding is that the countries in the Western world are the least happy in the world. We are the least happy. We have the most material stuff, but we're the least happy. And actually, countries that are quite poor in Africa and places are almost 100% happy. They're so high up on the chart of happiness. But they have nothing, and we go there and say, oh, these poor people. I feel so sorry for them. But they're very happy. And so there's a whole new assessment going on. The U.S. government has a program now looking at total health, it's being called now. And this is a wheel that sort of comes from the government, which is looking at the dimensions of health. And we're looking at occupational health as one of the elements of health. And are you happy doing what you're doing? And that's, again, back to what young people are actually asking. Because if you're not happy with what you're doing, it affects your physical health. And that affects the cost of medical care for your country. Right? That has a huge impact on those things. Right? So they're beginning to look at social health is really important. Do I live in a community and with people that I like and that support me? Do I have good support systems and networks? Is my intellectual health good? Can I get education? Can I learn? Can I have opportunities to do things? Okay? These are all elements now of healthcare. Because we know now, we have proof now, that not having these things affects your health. And as we get older, it's how do you keep older people engaged? How do you keep them physically fit? How do you help an aging population? Look at all these different elements. And so if you look at this, and these are core values of Gen Y and Gen Z. These are the core values around health and happiness. So when I look at recruitment now, there's several companies in America that are really focusing on this right now. And they've got whole campaigns around, we're a happier, healthier place to work. I'm talking to younger people that are looking for jobs or have switched jobs. And I'm asking them, I just talked to one young guy, he left Facebook for a startup company. And I said, why did you leave Facebook? I thought Facebook was a startup. I thought it was and he said, well, ever since we went public, it's not fun anymore to work here. He said, now it's like, all we do is fill out all these forms and we can't do this and we can't do that. And back before we were a public company, we had a lot of fun. We could do a lot of stuff. So he went to work for a small startup of about 6 people. And, so this is about happiness. This is about, not having a lot of rules and regulations and so forth. So this is all, you start to see a picture for me here. Kind of the macro trends of what's going on. And then there's a game called Mind Loop. And this is really getting a lot of interest in the U.S. right now. This is a game where you actually play a game to assess your health. And it's a fun, interactive game, which gets back into another factor we're going to talk about here, which is gamification as a way to attract people. But you can go and play a game around your relationships, your health, your lifestyle, your career, and you compete with other people. You crowdsource the game, and you compete and say, oh my gosh, that person's happier than me. And how can I compete and get better? Yes, maybe a very America. Maybe. All right. A lot of branding now. If you go to marketing conferences around corporate brand, they're focusing now on happiness and health. This is being built into brands. So you start watching brands. I've been watching it in the U.S. They're using lots of green now in corporate logos. Last year, or 45 years ago, corporate logos were either blue or red. Now they're all becoming green and yellow and brown. And they're also starting to put little plants and organic things in their logos. Okay? So this is the subtle stuff that goes on, but you've got to be aware of it. Okay? And it's about, are we doing anything in recruitment or in HR to look greener and healthier and happier and to be more attractive? I look at most of the HR stuff I've seen, it's the most boring, awful stuff I've ever seen in my life. Terrible stuff. Okay? And they've even are rating jobs now as the happiest jobs in America. And they actually have a score coming out. And in America we have scores for everything. Right? So we have one now for the happiest jobs. And this is a career site called Career Bliss. And this is what it looks at. It says my pure bliss or happiness is never having to hide my weird streak. In other words, I need to work for some place where it's okay that I can be really weird, because I'm just a weird person. So there's a whole lot of focus upon relationships and on your candidate and customer experience. And I know you're all involved in this, but we're soon going to be having these social influencing scores that are going to become quite important. And I don't know if any of you here use Cloud, but that's what this one is here. And there's some companies in the U.S. right now, 3 or 4 that I know of, startups, that won't hire you unless you have a Cloud score over 50. Now, Cloud is a score of how frequently you use tools like LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, and not only how much you use them, but how much anybody cares that you use them. So if you tweet all day and nobody ever retweets or ever comments, your score will not be very high.
It's very influential. Influence Cloud a lot. There are a lot of tactics to raise it.
Yeah. I'm very early on. But my point is that this will become as important as your financial score and other scores as we move down the road. So how well do you interact with people? How well do you connect? How connected are you and socially? Certainly a tremendously important skill if you're a recruiter. Would you hire a recruiter with a Cloud score of 2? I wouldn't. So this is, and then there's another major shift that's going on. It's sort of subtle. And we're shifting away from lengthy discourse, long documents, big books. Younger people in particular, just don't read. But even older people aren't reading. Amazon has a great figure that something like 70% of all the books, e-books, that are bought on Amazon are never read. They can track it now if you're using your iPad. People buy the books, they may look at the first page, that's it. The book's never read. Okay? But we don't read. Okay? We use fewer words, and we're very much people of the screen. We have pretty much moved to video imagery is what attracts and is what people are after. If you don't read, then you're not going to read a job description. You're not going to read any of this stuff that we're putting out. You're not going to read these websites that have tiny little type that you can barely see that tell me way more about the company than I want to know, but nothing real. So I want to know what's really going on in the company. I want to see videos. I want interactivity. And basically, we're moving beyond words into a world of a whole new language. And there's 2 professors at Berkeley that are really researching into this. But we're moving into a world of symbols, LOL, hashtag, @ signs. Okay? This is another one to hieroglyphics. This is like the Egyptians had. You're going to have a translator to translate this in 100 years. You think your grandmother can understand anything you're tweeting? No, I look at this and I say, my mother used to say, what is this? I got this thing, it says you, but not Y-O-U, just you. And then it's the number 4, meaning for you or something. And she can't read it. And she's saying, I can't understand this. They can't even spell. And I say, well, you only have 160 characters. You have to shorten it down, right? So we're moving beyond words into symbols, video, pictures, language. The number 1 feature of the iPad and the iPhone, our retina screen, is a camera. How many megapixels? Nobody cares how many words you can put on it. So very different thing, very different. So 2013 and beyond for recruiting, obviously social media is going to dominate it. We're going to see it become pretty much the way we do everything. The way we buy things, the way we decide what to buy. All this is going to be done through social media. Okay? Already is being done that way. huge shift to mobile, virtual-based tools and recruiting. Right along with my moving away from words, we're moving into video for everything. If you're in recruitment, you've got to be figuring out how do I use video for assessment, for messaging, for engaging my candidates. How do I do video interviewing? How do I do video marketing? How do I move out there with the most video-oriented, mobily enabled apps can I possibly have? Global RPO is going to become a very huge thing. It's already growing rapidly. The figures are pretty impressive that I've seen about growth for RPO around the world. And I think what you're going to see is inside corporate recruiting shrinking to be small groups of very skilled, highly skilled strategic professionals. And then a whole ring of services around them, primarily RPO for many functions within the company, and then a whole new look at how we work in terms of the contingent workforce, part-time, flex workers, contract workers, and who those are, and another whole group that manages that whole piece of it, and then perhaps a few agencies here and there to fill in the gaps. But it's going to become a complex, varied picture, and very different than kind of the simple model we have today of this or that. It's going to be both of them kind of all merged together in a very complex formula, and it will be different for every company as to how that turns out. This is it's grown 25 to 30% growth in 1 year in the U.S. It's incredible. I'm on an advisory board of a large RPO in the U.S. I can't disclose their figures, but they're mind-blowing. The growth is just phenomenal. Workana is this is a tool that was just launched, and it was just acquired by Everbase in the UK. And this is basically this is like Recruit Loop in a way for Latin and South America. So it's global as well, and we're moving out into global markets and developing these tools for China, for South America, and Africa is booming as well. And most of us aren't recruiting in any of those markets and don't even know how to, and yet talent is located everywhere. And a lot of it doesn't matter where you are because you can program in Africa as well as you can in Amsterdam, and yet we're not tapping that market. And as the Netherlands gets older and you need more workers, you may have to be tapping those markets. So this becomes a whole new area. Simulations in gaming. I showed you MindBloom for health. This is Shaker is a company. I'm not advertising the company, but they create virtual job tryouts, which allows a candidate to actually experience the job, to take part as if they were almost an intern in the job, and to try out to do the job. And they can answer questions about the job and almost live the job experience through video and interactivity. And Starbucks is using this for all of their recruitment for baristas. And then there is the Marriott Corporation. They have got a lot of publicity for this. This is a cartoon game that they use to hire cooks right now. But they started with chefs and cooks because they have to understand and know a lot of health regulations and cleanliness regulations. And so basically if you apply for a job as a chef or cook at any Marriott hotel, you'll have to take this simulation, which puts you through preparing food, having the guests call up and say, I don't want my hamburger anymore, take it back. What do you do with a hamburger? And so forth. How do you store food? How do you take care of food? And all this kind of stuff. And they're expanding this out to desk clerks, to maids, to pretty much every job in the company. So simulation in gaming is going to become a core tool for assessment in the next year or two. And we're moving definitely away from text-based job descriptions. There's a couple of approaches. Lou's approach, which I like very much. There's also an approach to use more graphics and words and video. And this is a New Zealand-based company. They're creating infograms of jobs. And it's hard to see them because they're kind of long and skinny. But this is one that I kind of took a piece of. This is for a university in Australia. They're looking for a professor of digital media studies. This is the first part of the job description.
It's a very applicable role.
It is. Yeah, very much so. And then this is the next part of it. It's all a long strip. I broke it up. And you click on that little arrow and a video plays about the job. There's video embedded in these things. So these become interactive multimedia presentations describing the job and what I'm going to be doing in the job. And to me, that's a lot better than a job posting. So, just a couple more slides and I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
You're welcome.
I think it was a great presentation. At least I enjoyed it myself, so thank you very much for it. The Q&A with Kevin will be after Lou's presentation as well. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a small drink again.